how is ITP diagnosed? Most things in medicine, if someone comes along and they have all the symptoms and signs of a disease, and they have a blood test that shows an antibody that causes the disease, you say, well, diagnosis made, easy. That's the case for most diseases like thyroid disease, lupus. It's usually generally straightforward. If you have the symptoms of the disease, have a blood test that shows the antibody, you've got the disease confirmed. But unfortunately, that's not the case in ITP. I won't say it's a difficult diagnosis, but it's a diagnosis of exclusion, which means you have to make sure it's not another disease causing low platelet count. So you have to rule out other causes of low platelet count. It's not a really simple kind of two-step diagnosis.
So I want to talk to you about light, okay? So this is a thing that's on the horizon that hasn't been FDA approved by anybody. It's not been given to patients yet, but it's given a lot of mice and a couple of monkeys. So this is a megakaryocyte. It's got some batteries in it. The megakaryocyte starts dying. And this is a process called apoptosis, and there are a whole bunch of things get activated, but they're all activated by the mitochondrial batteries running out of steam. And so you can then shine a light on these guys. You can recharge the batteries. The megakaryocyte now lives, and it makes platelets. And so this is going to be tested in monkey models in the next couple of weeks, and it's going to be tested in humans sometime next couple of years. But we have a whole device being developed in low-level laser lights like going to a tanning box.
Most of the time, ITP in kids, we put a circle around 80%, get better without any need for treatment. And the problem is that we can't always identify who's going to get better quickly and who's not. Although there is a bit of information, if you're a male and you're young, as in early childhood, you've probably got a better prognosis compared to a female in an adolescent period. They're the ends of the spectrum. We do know that those risk factors are associated with prolonged ITP, but most get better.
What's interesting is that you don't have to have ITP to get ITP of pregnancy. So there are women who, for the first time, get ITP, and they may have it only during their pregnancy. As soon as the pregnancy is over, they no longer have ITP. There are women who get it for the first time in pregnancy, and unfortunately it never goes away, or it takes a year or two before it goes away. And then women who have ITP typically get worse during pregnancy and have to be watched a lot more closely than we normally would. What helps us somewhat in the diagnosis is that this is the most common cause of having a low platelet count in the first trimester. So when I get referred someone who is very early in their pregnancy who has a low platelet count, I'm now thinking this is not gestational, which usually occurs a little bit later as the blood volume increases. I usually am thinking, well, you really have no business having dropped your platelet count yet, and now we may be looking at ITP. And of course, certainly for anybody who's had children, you know that the thing you're worried most about is not me, I'm worried about my baby. Is my baby going to be okay? That's what we all worry about.
So what happens with your spleen? Your spleen sits at the tail end of your pancreas, and a lot of blood goes through it. And inside the spleen sit the macrophages and some really important white blood cells. And their role is to trigger an antibody response and basically get rid of the bacteria. And they're the encapsulated bacteria, so the ones with a coat. And we think of those ones as pneumococcal, meningococcal, and Haemophilus influenzae. So that's what we have to educate patients about.
And so the way I see it is that we call it ITP as a disease because it's convenient. But in all of us with ITP, there's a different problem in what's going on in your immune system, which is why we can't always predict that the treatment that works for you is going to work equally well for the next person. So part of understanding the difficulty with clinical trials in ITP, for me, is to recognise that there's not going to be a silver bullet. Not commonly, not unless your bullet involves affecting a range of targets. I would also like to talk a little bit about, not just in the context of clinical trials, but also in terms of the way you approach your own disease, taking ownership over your ITP.
We want this to be a community, we want this to be, a network of people, banding together. I know that we've all got social media, there's the ITP for Aussies page, but I think that face-to-face connection is really important as well.